Hey, good morning, friends. Josh here. Welcome to Morning Meditations and part 3 of Gideon. If you're just jumping in, we are doing a study of the book of Judges, going through each judge of the Old Testament and kind of analyzing them and what they did for the nation of Israel. Currently on Gideon, and Gideon is very rich and a little long, so we're breaking it up into multiple parts and honing in on certain themes to see if they have any relevance and application for us today. All right, so last time we talked about Gideon being called and his initial sort of disbelief, and then his realization that God was really speaking to him through the messenger after he burnt up this meal that Gideon served the messenger, and then God called him to cut down the Ashereth poles and the altar of Baal. And then the people of the village waking up the next morning, because he did this at night. He was afraid for his family. Did it at night. The people woke up and they're like, "Oh my gosh, what happened? Who did this? We need to find this guy and kill him." Lo and behold, it was Gideon. And Gideon's dad comes to the forefront and says, "Hey, Baal's a god, so let Baal defend himself." And so everybody just kind of backed down from Gideon. All right, now picking up for today, many of you have probably heard of Gideon's fleece, and so that's kind of what we're introducing today. So right after the people kind of back down and give Gideon some breathing space, God kind of prompts Gideon to action again. So Gideon calls upon the people. All of these forces from the Midianites and the Amalekites and the people from the east, they come together, they cross the Jordan River, and they encamp in the valley of Jezreel. So these are like opposing forces. And then the Spirit of God clothed Gideon, it says, and he sounded the trumpet, and he sends out all these messengers throughout Manasseh and all throughout the land, and he gathers people. He gathers Jewish forces from Asher, Zebulun, and Naphtali, and they all gather to meet him. Then Gideon, he prays this prayer to God. He says, "If you will save Israel by my hand, as you have said, behold, I am laying a fleece of wool on the threshing floor. If there is dew on the fleece alone, and it is dry on all the ground around it, then I shall know that you will save Israel by my hand, as you have said." And it was so. So it happened. When he rose early the next morning, he squeezed the fleece, and he wrung out enough dew from the fleece to fill a bowl with water. Then Gideon said to God, "Let not your anger burn against me. Let me speak just once more. Please let me test just once more with the fleece. Please let it be dry on the fleece only, and all around it let it be wet. Let there be dew on the ground." And God did so that night, and it was dry on the fleece only, and on the ground there was dew. All right. This is it makes me laugh when I read this in scripture, because prior to me even being a Christian or reading through the Old Testament and coming upon this story, I, like other people who I've encountered, have put out this fleece to God. God, show me a sign. God, if I'm supposed to do this, then let this happen. If you want me to do this, then show me a sign by letting this happen or not letting this happen. And so we call that putting out a fleece. And there's people who read scripture, and there's certainly parts that say do not test the Lord, and yet we see Gideon, he's testing God, and he seems to have some indication that testing God may be slightly upsetting to God, which is why he says, don't be angry with me. Don't let your anger burn against me, but let me just speak once more. So we see this man who he's from the least of the tribes. He's the youngest in his clan, and God has called him to do this mighty work, and he's still very, very much insecure, even though God is helping him and empowering him. So much so that he's got this pattern going where he hears God's prompting, he moves to action, and then the very next thing, he's still riddled with doubt. And that's comforting to me because, so often we read biblical stories, especially in the Old Testament, and we see like these characters of massive courage and doing these almost superhuman things. And Gideon is a guy, that I think the average person can relate to. We take a step in faith, and then the very next step is still we're doubting. And we pray the prayer. We say, God, I hear you. I heard you 2 steps back there. It was pretty clear, but I'm 2 steps forward now, and I'm doubting again. Will you show me another sign? And so, what does God do? He shows him the sign, right? He shows him what he needs in order to build that confidence incrementally to be able to do what God is calling him to do. And so that's the thought for today, guys. I want you to think about times in your life where you kind of you go back and forth between being confident in what God is calling you into in your life, how God is prompting your spirit, calling you to action, calling you to move, and how you maybe experience excitement or doubt, and you put out these fleeces like, God, I think I know what you're calling me to do, but if you could just show me a sign. I want you to reflect on those times in your life this morning as you go about your day. Think about it and think about how God has answered your prayers to show you a sign, or maybe how he hasn't, and how you could be still waiting. So, good food for thought. I love you guys, and we'll continue a study of Gideon tomorrow. I love you. Take care. Bye.